Before we begin, check out my new Patreon page with videos too spicy for YouTube. I highly recommend subscribing. I'll post few times a week. Story. I am about to share my story, and I bet it will make you understand that women are gold diggers. I am ready for all the lashback that I might get on this statement. But trust me, I have experienced it first hand, and suffered physically and mentally because of it. I am a 35-year-old male working in a production company and earning well. My ex-wife was 30 years old and worked as a nurse in a well-renowned hospital for the elite and rich crowd. My wife and I were earning good figures and could have easily lived a comfortable life if my wife hadn't been so greedy. She was typically a real-life Karen who thought that she was some sort of princess and should be given royal treatment. Trust me, I did try my best to keep her happy and not spoil her mood. But there's a limit, right? An employee like me cannot afford luxury brands that keep popping up on her Instagram feed. But Karen was super smart. She found another way to fulfill her desires by working as a part-time sex worker. And here's how I found it. Karen was a whiny bitch kind of person. She was never satisfied with what she had and always compared herself to random strangers, crying about not being rich or having to go to the hospital daily to get her salary. It wasn't my fault that her parents were poor, or she didn't get born in a palace. Right. I was sick and tired of explaining to her that we had enough resources and she shouldn't waste her or my money on expensive dresses or bags. But Karen being Karen, she would always roll her eyes and give me an earful for how I was cheap and never spent on her. Call it my bad luck, but the hospital where Karen worked was for rich people. The patients would come in expensive, branded clothes and accessories in luxurious cars, plus they would ask for a luxurious and super comfortable room, even if they stayed only for a few hours. Every day, Karen would give me details about the patients, but more than telling me about their disease or treatment, she would talk about the jewelry the oldie was wearing or the latest edition of goggles the patient's wall. Looking at all this stuff all day long, she wanted it too. But Karen was stupid. She couldn't understand that she worked for the rich and could never be one of them. Anyway, here's what aroused my suspicion. Karen was up to something in hiding from me. She returned from the hospital and showed me a fancy and delicate perfume bottle. She kept sniffing it and raving about how much she loved it. I asked her where she got it, and she told me that some patients gave it to her as a gift because she was nice. I told her that she shouldn't accept patient gifts, which might create trouble for her at the hospital. But she told me the lady had given her that gift outside the hospital and number one saw her receiving it. I still told her to maintain professionalism and not initiate friendships with patients. She agreed with me and very carefully took the perfume bottle. I was curious about the price of the perfume, so I Googled it and was shocked to see that it cost around $180, and I was shocked. Why would a patient give such an expensive gift to a nurse? It felt odd, but I didn't press this matter much because maybe $180 wasn't a huge sum for rich patients who came to the hospital. A few days later, I saw a bracelet on her wrist and asked her where she got it. And Karen told me that the old lady had gifted it to her. Now, this wasn't okay at all. I sternly told Karen that it isn't okay to accept gifts from a stranger, but she told me that the lady likes her and feels happy to give presents to her. Honestly, it was pretty dumb. I told her that she should stop receiving these gifts before the hospital management found out. But she got super pissed and told me that I was being jealous that I couldn't afford such stuff and she was getting it for free. And then she went into full Karen mode and babbled until I told her to shut up. After that incident, I hadn't seen any gifts or expensive stuff. A few days later, I even joked around and asked her if that old lady had expired because she hadn't given her any gift, and Karen laughed it off. Karen told me the lady still comes for her weekly dialysis and likes to talk to her as she is alone. Karen even told me where that lady lived. her age, how rich she was, etc. She knew a lot of things about that lady. It was a bit strange because Karen never took an interest in any of her patients to this extent. I found something in Karen's cupboard a week later that shook me. I was rummaging through closet because I couldn't find my important stuff and found a thick envelope with crisp currency notes. I decided to confront Karen and ask her where she got it. I was worried that she had been stealing from the hospital or her patients, and I would go down with her if the hospital found out. She was shocked when I asked about the envelope and told me she had been saving up. I didn't buy her crap because why would she save money in the closet instead of keeping it in a bank or opening a separate saving account? After much pressing, she told me that her lady patient was tipping her instead of giving gifts. I told her that she was lying because nobody tips nurses. Again, she made up a funny story who tips nurses. And when she realized I wasn't giving up, she told me that she visits that lady's house sometimes to check her blood pressure, sugar level, other symptoms, etc., and charges them for that. I couldn't believe Karen risked her job just for a few dollars. The hospital didn't know Karen had visited the patient's house. I guess it was not allowed for the hospital staff to provide their services privately to the patients or visit their place. I told her she could lose her well-paying job, and she told me she was very careful and won't get caught. It was useless to argue with her. I mean, she had decided to earn extra and nothing could stop her. She loved money. In fact, it would be wrong to say that she lost her mind in the lust for minting more money. My suspicions were aroused when Karen got herpes. Her neck and right side of her face had blisters and cold sores. I am not a healthcare professional, but I know that herpes is also in stead. And I shared that with Karen, asking her why she got it, because I didn't have herpes. I swear I had no intention of hurting her or anything. I just shared so she could tell me the other ways through which this disease is transmitted, but she lost her mind and started yelling at me. She was so angry at me that I accused her of cheating when honestly, I had no such intention. After a lot of apologizing and listening to an earful, she told me that herpes could be transmitted by other means, like a person can contract herpes if he touches the skin of another person with herpes, or in any way comes in contact with their saliva. Things got normal and Karen started going to the hospital once her skin was all clear and herpes-free. In the next few days, I experienced some hot flashes and a tiny painless sore on my body. I didn't take it seriously and thought it would go on its own. But after a week, the sore was still there, and I decided to go to the doctor. A few tests were run, and the doctor examined my sore and told me that the sore looked like an initial stage of syphilis. I was shocked. How could I get syphilis when I only had one partner? I wasn't sexually involved with anyone. But then it struck me and I was dumbfounded. Maybe my wife was sleeping with an infected person, which transferred to me. My mind was racing, and I was sure that she had contracted herpes sexually, and that's why she lost her temper when I asked about herpes being stuck. All of Karen's activities were making sense now. I was 100% sure she had an affair partner and was cheating behind my back. I experienced rage and betrayal and wanted to confront Karen, but I decided first to find out who the guy was and then end my marriage with Karen. I did my research on syphilis and found out that the symptoms appear after 3 months of being exposed to the infection. That meant Karen had been out with that guy for 3 months or even more. And I was completely oblivious to my wife's activities for all these months. But I had decided to collect proof and then file for divorce, so I wouldn't have to give her anything from my resources. That night when Karen came back, I tried unlocking her phone, but she had changed her password. I had to wait till she was asleep to open her phone through her fingerprints, and guess what? I was successful in doing so. I checked her phone and nothing was unusual. Her messages and call records were all okay. The only thing I found weird was that Karen's gallery was full of nude mirror selfies and videos. Karen liked clicking her pictures, but she never clicked such photos. After seeing those photos, she must have sent this to her boyfriend. And I opened every chat on her WhatsApp and found her app's chat. She had archived the chat and shared her obscene pictures with him. I read their chat and learned that they met several times a week and the guy is smitten by Karen. She had shared a sob story with me about how I was such a cheap guy and was abusive to her. Basically, my wife had told her app that she wasn't happy with her married life. I took screenshots of the chats and her pictures and forwarded them to my phone. I had something planned for Karen, something that would fulfill her dream of being rich. I also opened her GPS and shared its location with me. That way, I could see where she goes to have fun with her app. 2 days later, her location showed me she was not in the hospital and going elsewhere. I immediately called her to see where she was going. I asked her if she was still in the hospital and she said yes, that it was too busy and that she would call me later. I used her location and arrived at the address where she had come. To my surprise, it was an elite area and posh apartments. My first thought was that maybe she was privately visiting one of her patients. She had told me that the rich lady that came for her dialysis lived in this area. I asked one of the neighbors about Mrs. Anderson's apartment, and she gave me a strange look and told me her floor number. I knocked at Mrs. Anderson's apartment, and my wife opened the door as expected. She was so shocked to see me that for a moment or two, and she couldn't breathe. I saw her, and she wasn't dressed as a nurse, but in a revealing blouse, with her face full of makeup. I pushed her aside, went inside and saw no Mrs. Anderson, but only Mr. Anderson in his 60s. My wife was giving the time of life to a fat old man who looked like a playboy of oldies. I was furious at that time and hit Karen. I told her that I didn't want to see her face and that she could marry this oldian and stay with him for the rest of her life. I guess that oldie got scared of my outburst and threatened to call the police. I left the apartment and felt so sick to my stomach that my wife had been screwing her patient. The mystery of expensive gifts, money, and pictures became so clear now. My wife was sleeping with this guy to get all the gifts and money she always wanted. I went home and started packing up Karen's stuff. I didn't want to be with the woman who gave me an steed that could possibly damage organs. I didn't tell Karen about the steed and decided to let her suffer until she found out on her own. Call me a Satan or whatever you want, but I needed to get back to her. How could I let her go away so easily after putting my health at risk? When Karen returned, she started crying and sobbing that the man liked her and gave her gifts. And he suggested that Karen come to his place to spend time. Karen could have turned down his cheap offer or reported him to the hospital management. But instead, this crackhead accepted that guy's offer and started going to his place to sleep with him and get paid. So, basically, my wife was working as a full-time nurse at the hospital and a part-time sex worker for this exclusive patient. She begged me not to kick her out of the house, and I told her I was a cheap and abusive husband, so why did she want to live with me? She was shocked about how I found everything about her. If I hadn't gotten that sore on my body, I wouldn't have known that I had contracted STED from my wife who had got it from that oldie douchebag. I asked her to leave and she cried constantly to have mercy on her because she did not have anywhere to go. I told her she could stay with that Anderson guy in return for the favors she had been doing for him. I pushed her away from me and she tripped and hurt her ankle. I told her she could use the cash she had been hiding, stay in a hotel or rot in hell because I was so done with her. I was already tired of her endless tantrums and complaints and whiny nature, but sleeping around with someone without realizing that this man could have stayed. She not only exposed herself, but also me to something life-threatening. I had kicked her out of my place, but there was a lot more that I needed to do to avenge myself. And here's what I did. Take notes, people. I used her nude pictures and created her OnlyFans account. That's right. If she wants to earn money by hook or by crook, then why not join a platform specifically designed for this purpose? I know I did not take her consent, but if she can share these pictures with a random stranger, who showered her with gifts, then why not with many perverts out there, who would give her money? I shared her private number on her profile. Of course, when she learned about this, she had gone mad and begged me to take that down. But honestly, I was so happy seeing her suffer. The next thing was to inform the hospital what she was doing with the patients. I emailed her department head with her pictures, a link to OnlyFans account and the screenshots of the conversation with Anderson guy. It was hard for me to wait for the hospital to fire this money hungry bitch. And I guess almost a week or two later, Karen lost her job too. Hooray. I think I was rejoicing when Karen called and cursed me for ruining her life. It still gives me pleasure to this day that she lost her job in such a reputable healthcare center. And the hospital sued her, which made things even better because her nursing license got revoked because of getting intimate with the patient. She had no clue that one more surprise awaited her. I wanted to tell her that she had stabbed, but that would ruin all the fun. My family and friends were shocked to learn about Karen and offered me their sympathies for a ruined marriage. But I think divorce from Karen is a good riddance. Why would I feel bad for ending my marriage with the woman who was not sincere with me and slept with rich old patients to enjoy the expensive presents that he gave her? My family and friends do not know about my steed either. I don't want to make it public knowledge and become a laughingstock for people that a poor guy got dead because of his cheating wife who fooled around with patients. Karen has lost her job and no longer has her practicing license. Plus, she ruined her marriage. In comparison, that rich oldie lost nothing. He still goes to the hospital, and I learned that he wasn't only sleeping with Karen but a good bunch of actual sex workers. I cannot imagine how many diseases are inside him, and Karen didn't even care before initiating a physical relationship with him. I guess instead of dying from kidney failure, he will die because of his studs. But in this entire drama, Karen and I suffered the most. Just last week, I received a call from an unknown number and it was Karen. She literally called me pig dog and whatnot from hiding the fact that she might have stew. She recently experienced sharp pain in her uterus. She got herself checked and found out that she had developed PID, some kind of pelvic inflammation that infects the uterus, ovaries, and fallopian tubes. This infection was the result of her syphilis, about which she knew nothing. Karen said that if the PID worsens, it would make her infertile. If that happens, she would never be able to carry a child. I told her that she deserved it, to which she again lost it, and wished that I never become a father and I die because of my syphilis. I didn't pay any attention to her and disconnected the call. I don't feel sorry for her. I mean, she chose all of this for herself. We would still have been together if she had listened to me at the beginning of not being blinded by money or extravagant things. But after what she did, I guess she deserves misery and nothing else. It makes me shudder even to imagine what would have happened if I hadn't paid attention to my symptoms. If I had ignored them, my disease could have aggravated and worsened. Guess those little sores were eye-openers for me to see what my wife did behind my back. My trust in women has weakened. I don't know if I'll be able to trust again, but nothing can change my mind about women not being gold diggers. All the stuff of sincerity and loyalty is bullshit to women. They only care about money and how much their partner showers gifts on them. Loyalty, respect, and care hold no value to them. The biggest lesson from this story is, of course, to subscribe to my channel as well as like and comment your opinion under the video. Everything helps for the algorithm.